It started on a stormy Thursday morning in Washington, D.C. The kind of morning where the clouds feel heavy, not just with rain, but with something bigger tension, maybe. Something was brewing on Capitol Hill, and the energy in the air made it impossible to ignore. The Senate hearing room buzzed with whispers and sidelong glances. Everyone knew something major was about to go down, but no one could have predicted just how seismic it would be. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, known for his wit and Southern charm, walked into the chamber with a quiet purpose in his stride. His eyes were calm, but focused, like a man who had carried a truth too long, and was finally ready to set it free. On the other side of the room sat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez AOC, passionate and utterly confident. For years, she had captivated the left with her fiery speeches, unwavering ideals, and her refusal to be boxed in by traditional politics. And for just as long, critics like Kennedy had stood in her way, viewing her bold progressive vision as reckless idealism. The hearing was supposed to be another standard debate on energy policy, part of the long-standing clash between the old guard and the new. But it quickly spiraled into something else, something raw, personal, and unforgettable. AOC took the floor first. Her words were sharp and urgent. She spoke about climate justice, corporate greed, and the need to dismantle the fossil fuel industry. The gallery roared with applause from supporters. Cameras flashed, and for a moment, it felt like the tide was, once again, moving in her favor. But then Senator Kennedy stood up. The room fell silent, not because he raised his voice, but because he didn't. He began with a story. A story about a small Louisiana town, devastated by the closure of a natural gas plant after federal pressure. To transition to clean energy, families broken, jobs lost, a school shut down, suicides, children forced to relocate hundreds of miles away just to survive. It wasn't a speech, it was a eulogy. Then, with the steadiness of a man who had checked and double-checked every number, every line of data, he dropped the fact. "You say your policies are for the people," Kennedy said softly. His eyes fixed on AOC. "But according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the energy bill you co-authored last year will increase utility costs for working class families by 42% over the next decade. That's not opinion, that's not politics, that's math." The number hung in the air like a bomb mid-det. There was a shift in the room. Murmurs, then silence, then something else, doubt. AOC responded, her voice shaking not with fear, but frustration. She countered with renewable investment projections, green job creation promises, a hopeful future. But Kennedy wasn't done. He pulled out a handwritten letter from a single mother in West Virginia, who couldn't afford both groceries and electricity since the local coal plant closed. Her words were simple. "I believed in change. Now, I just want to feed my kids." That's when something cracked, not just in the political back and forth, but in the room itself. Because suddenly, this wasn't about ideology. It wasn't about who won the debate. It was about people, real people. And the question Kennedy posed, without ever shouting or mocking, was brutally clear. Are we helping the people we claim to fight for? Or are we sacrificing them for a dream that's too far away to feed them today? Cameras zoomed in on AOC's face. For the first time in her career, she didn't have a ready answer. The hearing ended, but the fallout didn't. Clips from Kennedy's speech went viral. Not just among conservatives, but moderates, independents, and even disillusioned progressives. Not because it was an attack, but because it was a reckoning. His calm, almost fatherly delivery carried more weight than 10 fiery monologues. He wasn't trying to own her. He was trying to protect the forgotten. And it worked. Over the next few weeks, AOC's approval ratings began to dip, not dramatically, but noticeably. Editorials questioned whether her ambitious policies lacked empathy for the economically vulnerable. Public opinion began to shift. Young people still admired her passion, but older generations, small business owners, and middle-class families began to ask harder questions, and this time, they weren't so easily swayed by ideals. Then came the real turning point. At a CNN town hall, a young woman from Ohio, visibly nervous, stood up and said, I used to think you were speaking for people like me. But when Senator Kennedy shared that letter, I realized, I don't think you're listening to us anymore. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They sat in heavy silence. AOC looked stunned. She offered empathy, talked about her commitment to reform, promised to re-examine certain policies. But something had shifted. Once the invincible icon of progressive power, she now looked human, flawed, vulnerable. Meanwhile, Kennedy's words echoed across the country not as an attack, but a plea for balance. Progress without compassion, he said in a later interview, is just a prettier kind of cruelty. The story of that day didn't end AOC's career overnight, but it marked the beginning of a long, difficult chapter she hadn't anticipated. A chapter where facts fought feelings, where consequences spoke louder than convictions, where the people who once blindly followed began to question what they were following. And for Senator John Kennedy, it wasn't about winning. It was about reminding Washington that behind every policy, there's a person. Behind every vote, a family. That single fact, quiet, undeniable, and painfully human, was enough to shift the tide. Final message: in the world of politics, where noise often drowns out truth, sometimes it takes just one fact, delivered with honesty and heart, to remind us all what matters most. Not the headlines, not the hashtags, but people, their struggles, their stories, and their survival.